A push stick is a great safety device that allows you to control your stock while you're cutting it or routing it and keep your hands and fingers away from the blade. A lot of the push sticks that you see are sticks, I guess, and they've got maybe a bird's mouth at the end of it. And you're supposed to, push your material through the saw. The problem with those is they don't really give you much control. They allow you to push, but if the material comes away from the fence and you've just got a little bit of your stick holding onto the material, the only thing you can do is push. So I prefer a push stick that looks more like this. So this has a couple of advantages. First, it sits on top of the material as opposed to just at the end. So what that allows me to do is actually steer the material and get it back against the fence if it does come away from the fence. The upper portion here is wide enough where I can get a good grip on it. The handle hole is positioned back a little bit so that I can put my thumb here and really get a good angle on it to push that way, right? If I'm only hanging onto it up here, I can't push as well to the side. But with my thumb there, I really can give a lot of force there if I need to. Some of the push sticks, the handle hole goes much further forward. And for me to put my thumb there, it moves my hand much further forward, and now I feel like I'm pushing down too far at the front. So this one is designed to put your hand in the right spot, more towards the back. This particular one is from a John Nyquist design, and notice it has this double bump here. What that allows you to do is, if for some reason you want to make sure that you're fully flat against something or actually steer this a little bit, I can take a second one, and because there's 2 points of contact, that gives me even more control than just hitting on a corner there. So I really like this push stick. It works great for me. Some people find that this width here is a little bit too big for their hands, and they have difficulty hanging on to that, especially if they want to put their thumb there. So I have a second one that's essentially the same, except this is smaller, and that for people with smaller hands, that works a little better for them. For materials, I prefer a solid wood piece that's on the soft side. So the ideal material, I think, is alder or redwood, if you happen to have either of those kicking around. This one's alder. I have a couple here that are Douglas fir. These were left over from some cabinets that got torn apart. The Douglas fir works well. And I think, I've got a few here that are poplar. That's another one. I would avoid using, oak or maple because, we do on occasion, we cut through the bottom of the push stick, and you don't want a hard wood that's going to resist you. You want something that'll just go through the saw without any trouble. As for thickness, I generally want these to be at least 3/4 of an inch thick. You need enough stability where it wants to stay stable there. This particular one I think is more like 7/8 or an inch. I think up to an inch for me works well. So somewhere 3/4 to an inch is good. I have some templates here that I use to make these. So I'm going to walk through the process of making a push stick once you have a template. I've got a piece of poplar here about 7/8 or so thick. So the first thing I'm going to do is trace on here the pattern. Now I do have a square end here, so I'm just going to align this with the end. If this wasn't square, if it was rough cut, I'd move in just a little bit. When I route this, I want to route off roughly 1/16 of an inch or so. So, like I said, because that's square, I'm going to line that up there. I always want to line it up with the bottom, so I always want a surfaced edge. And we'll go ahead and trace this. Now, I would typically make about 6 or so of these at a time. You know, they're going to get cut up and beat up, so might as well make a bunch when you're doing it. Okay, we're ready to go to the next step, which is the bandsaw. Next, I want to drill a couple of holes here, and then we'll connect the holes with the jigsaw. I've got the fence set, not real necessary for just doing 2 holes, but if I was doing a bunch of these, it just makes this a lot quicker and easier. Next, I'll attach the pattern, and I'm going to, of course, put a couple of holes in here, but who cares? It's a push stick. To route this, I could use a flush trim bit or I could use a pattern bit. If I use the pattern bit, then I would turn this way and ride the bearing on there and route like that. That would work just fine, you know, as long as these screws are flush or below that surface. But the downside to that is now I've got the sharp bits of the bit sticking up. It's not quite as safe as this flush trim bit. If I do it this way, now similar situation, I of course still have the pairing riding on the pattern. But the part that's sticking up, if for some reason my hand came in contact with that, I'd much rather hit a bearing than the sharp end of a bit. I've adjusted the height of the bit so that the carbide is fully cutting the stock here and the bearings riding on the template. So now I want to move the fence so that when I start routing, I've got the part against the fence, and I'm going to rock down into here. I never want to come into a bit, and the first thing that touches is the cutter, because it can kick the material there. I've got the fence set now. I opened up the fence here just so I get a little better dust collection. Okay, we had some tear out there. We'll deal with that later. To do the handle hole, I've moved the fence back a little bit so that I can still be up against it. I'll turn on the router like that and then come into the cutter and move around. Okay, so yeah, when I was routing, I got some tear out, and apparently the grain on this is going uphill, so it didn't route well there. If I'd seen that ahead of time, maybe I would have flipped this the other direction, but I didn't notice that. So we'll just use the round over next, and we should be able to clean that up. Okay, that looks good. So I'll do the round over next. Now, on this part where I got some tear out, I'm going to do a climb cut. I don't normally do that, but I'm not taking off much material with this bit. I only need to do it on that side. The rest of it I'll be okay. Now, as I was routing that, I remembered, yeah, I didn't route all the way to the end with the pattern bit because I would get some tear out there. So I'm going to go sand that a little bit because I've got a little bit of a whoop-de-doo there. And then I'll redo that round over. So I'm going to just sand that a little bit to knock that corner down there. Last up, I need to make the notch. So I like to make this vertical cut about even with the back of the handle hole here. It just gives me a reference. For the long cut, I like to come up just a little less than 1/4 of an inch. I'm just going to eyeball it. But that allows me to cut 1/4 inch material without the back of the push stick sitting on the saw. So now, normally I wouldn't set the fence for this little cut, but you know, once again, if I was doing a lot of these, this would make it quick and easy to do that. So that's it. Normally I wouldn't sand this. It's usually smooth enough to hang on to, and turns out that tear out is far enough forward that when I'm using it, I don't touch that area. So we're good to go.